My dad's shout cut through the icy night, sharp enough to sting. "Leave my property right now, or I'll involve the police." His cheeks were flushed from anger, clouds of breath rising each time he exhaled. My Christmas presents were scattered across the frozen yard, half buried in the snow, like discarded scraps of a life he never bothered to value. Behind him stood my brother, his favorite, his shining pride, clapping slowly as if the moment had been rehearsed for years. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plead. I simply lifted my coat from the ground, brushed the snow from the collar, and smiled like I was relieved. That smile is all they remember. What they don't remember is how quietly I walked to my car, how steady my hands were when I turned the key, or how, just a couple of hours later, officers pulled up to the same house. And they weren't coming for me. They were coming to remove the tenants illegally occupying my home. But to understand that night, you have to understand everything that led to it. Growing up, affection for my father was something he rationed, and nearly all of it went to my brother. Not because my brother did anything special, he didn't, but because he fit the mold my dad wanted to see. Loud, compliant, easy to shape. I grew up in the background, easy to overlook but convenient to rely on. I balanced the books. I learned the trade. I cleaned up the messes he caused. And I convinced myself, like a fool, that one day he'd acknowledge me. That one day he'd look at me and say he was proud. He never did. He built his little dynasty and handed the throne to my brother. Any time I expressed ambition, I was labeled ungrateful. The break didn't happen all at once. It started quietly. Open mail that wasn't mine, missing statements, hushed conversations behind closed doors. My brother suddenly spending a lot of time in my father's office. I blamed myself like I was taught to, until the day I checked the online record for the house I had purchased with my own savings. Savings earned from running the family business while they pretended I didn't exist. And there it was, a notice for a transfer of occupancy. My house, the one I'd allowed them to stay in temporarily after they ruined their finances. They were trying to take it, rename it, claim it, erase me. My father called it our home when he needed a roof. Suddenly it became his home the moment it held value, and something cold and razor-sharp settled inside me. They had trained me to be useful, organized, precise. They just didn't expect I'd use those skills for myself. I didn't confront them. I documented everything. The lease they signed, the months of unpaid rent, screenshots of conversations, property records listed me as a sole owner, even recordings of their threats. I sent official notices they chose to ignore. I filed for eviction. I waited out all legal time frames. What they interpreted as silence was actually planning. What they saw as weakness was preparation. I revoked their access to my accounts, shut down the company credit card my brother had been draining, moved all business documents into my name, documents my father had casually signed while drunk, never bothering to read what he approved. Then I submitted the report for unauthorized occupancy, and I booked the officer visit for Christmas Eve. If they wanted to humiliate me on a holiday, I'd return the gesture. And so, Christmas Eve arrived with soft snow and perfect timing. "Leave now or I'm calling the police," my father had shouted. He didn't realize I had already done that. 2 hours later, flashing lights lit the yard. My father walked out proudly, certain the officers were there on his behalf. "Arrest him," he demanded. The officer didn't even turn toward me. "Sir," he said calmly, "you and the other occupant need to leave immediately. You're trespassing." My brother froze. My father's expression fell apart next. "What are you talking about?" My father barked. "My son owns his home." The officer nodded toward me. "He does. The son." The wind stopped. "So did their entitlement." "You have 10 minutes to gather your things," the officer added. My father opened his mouth, but nothing came out. My brother stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. I didn't taunt them or rub it in. I simply stood there and watched as they stepped out of the doorway. My doorway, just as they had forced me to step out of theirs. When the door shut behind them, the silence felt purer. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider trying to belong. I was the one holding the keys. I looked around the home they tried to steal, but ended up losing the home they walked away from on Christmas Eve, and whispered into the quiet rooms, "Merry Christmas." Because sometimes the sweetest gift is justice.